Hey everyone, I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise, sponsored by Cadillac. Today I have the privilege to speak with Lindsey Granger, a TV host, seasoned journalist, producer, and guest host for ABC's popular daytime talk show, The View. Lindsey has a new project that she is hosting and executive producing. It's called World of Travel, a docu-series that chronicles her journey to popular destinations around the world with her partner and their toddler. The show, which airs on streaming platforms and linear television via DirecTV, Roku, and Samsung TV, aims to inspire viewers to explore different cultures and destinations. Lindsey, thank you so much for being here with us on Black Enterprise.
Thank you, Selena. I'm really a fan of Black Enterprise. It's a staple for so many decades. And so I'm just so excited to be here.
Yes. So speaking of excitement, I know you must also be excited about World of Travel Season 2. I want to just take it back for those who aren't as familiar with this series. Tell us more about it and what inspired you to create it.
Yes, so I think in the travel space, I've always been someone who watched CNN, Anthony Bourdain, Parts
Yeah.
Unknown, and have just seen the different types of content that have been developed over the years. I also have a mom that worked for TWA, which is a now defunct airline, when I grew up. And so we used to be on a plane like it was nothing. We connected with our family in Florida and other states on standby like people do that have, airline passes. So that was kind of like how I grew up. So I realized that wasn't everyone's experience because I had the luxury of having a mom in that industry and having access to so much of the world. Plus, growing up in New York, diversity and different cultures was just normal to me. So as I got older and met different people that were experiencing going out of the country or different experiences for the first time, particularly my partner, Colin, that's when I was like, okay, more people need to understand that, while places like Miami and Cancun and where we often frequent are fun and amazing and definitely should be visited, there are so many options under, off the beaten path, so many options that may be popularized that are a longer flight that I just want to show you that people of color, particularly Black people, live there. They have their kids there. They experience life there. They're treated well there. And so the show started in that way, just to show people that we are all over the world. We can find community everywhere. And then it has developed into something where we really dive into the history of a place, what connects American experiences, politics, cultural, family to other countries. Most recently for season 2, we filmed 3 episodes in South Africa, which was eye-opening to me. Our first time filming in South Africa, but not my first time going. And I think that as somebody that has a production company and has a platform with the ability to share stories, it's almost like a newfound responsibility where it first started as, I want to document my travels. I want to share this because I wanted to travel. And I wanted people that I love to see and get recommendations. Now it's more, okay, we have an opportunity and access to millions of people across the world because our show airs in the US and 56 other countries to show them that people that look like us do a variety of things. Colin goes swimming with sharks. I'm jumping out of planes. Like, we are a diverse group of people worldwide. And I kind of wanted to show that within our community and all the moms too out there, that there's a lot to explore and learn and a lot of value in experiencing other cultures in the world.
That's amazing, Lindsey. It's the fact that you can travel and document that. And one of the things I love about traveling is just being submerged in that culture. Because I think for a lot of folks in the community, they vacation, right? They'll book a trip to the Caribbean and come back. But there's a huge difference between traveling and going on a vacation. And I love the fact that you're really exposing folks to see that not only are there huge cultural things to see when you're traveling, but young people and Black people can travel like that as well.
For sure. And I think that it's not like for Colin, my partner, who's also co-executive producer and owner of our production company, for him, he told me specifically, it wasn't that growing up in Beaumont, a really small town in Texas, is the reason why I never traveled, is because I didn't have access to those things. So a big trip for me was to drive down to Florida or to drive to New Orleans, drive to different parts of Louisiana where his mother is from. So it's not, he's like, I don't think that it's people in our community don't want to get out and do more than vacation. I think they didn't know what actually happens in these places. So once they get over the fear of maybe, let's say, the unknown or the long flight, showing them what exactly, and social media has done a really good job at this as well, but showing them exactly what you can experience there and how life-changing some of these trips can be, I think is something that I really want to push towards, as well as just learning about other cultures so we don't other people. We know that, listen, everybody has the same kind of values if they're a good person, right? They want the people around them to do well. They care about their family. If you're a mom, you want your kid to be a success in this world by any standards that you have, and all these basic things that humans kind of have in common. And we like to separate a lot. Working in news, I know that we find the bad news all the time, but I find that there's way more good and more commonality in all of us than we ever discuss.
Lindsey, what's it like traveling with a toddler?
Oh, it's crazy. I don't even try to lie. People, other moms are like, "Oh my God, what's your secret?" I'm like, there's not a secret. I definitely have tips. I have hacks. I have things that I buy on Amazon and other websites that make it easy for me. I have strollers that I love and can recommend how to make your life a little bit easier. But kids are so fickle. If she's not in the mood and she wants to throw a temper tantrum, then that's my 14-hour flight to South Africa with a temper tantrum. If she's in a great mood, then we are eating on the plane and, cheersing her orange juice while I drink my wine and having a great time. But that's a part of motherhood. And I was so particular about, because I was a mom at 33, so I was an older mom, and I was really intentional about just trying to fold my baby into my life as opposed to allowing motherhood to be my entire existence. And even though I love Kinsley to no end, I think that it's important for me, and I've learned from other mothers that have come and shared their experiences with me, that I have to keep my sense of identity. And if traveling is something so important to me, maybe I can fold her in and show her why some of these experiences are great. And now that she's 3 and a little bit older, in South Africa was the first time that I think that I actually saw her exploring the culture. Like, there's a clip of her asking me who Nelson Mandela was. And so these are all beautiful things that can happen throughout a child's life. And so I don't look at the bad so much. I highly recommend traveling with a grandma, grandpa, or somebody else that wants to just come on a trip. So you got to just maybe help them out, pay for it, and they'll be happy to go. I'm sure of it. Just ask your friends. I had a lot of hands go up when I said, okay, if I pay half, are you going to come? And so we ended up with a ton of help on some of these trips that we go on. And so that's what I would say. Just lean into your community and, make a trip fun. Bring somebody else and switch off the days. So mom and dad can go have a good time and grandma can go have a good time. And then everybody can have a good time as a family.
I like that strategy. Lindsey, what are some tips you would give for those who are traveling on a budget but want to explore a more exotic location?
Yeah, there are actually a lot of different places that you have to look to about the time of year and which year. So like right now, I've been seeing a lot of news about Japan being the cheapest it's ever been to fly there in 3 years. So if that's something that's on your bucket list, now is the time to really look into those flights. There are other destinations. Like I remember when Colin and I first started, we had to bring the budget way, way down because we had to fly a crew out there and all the things to make this a successful show. So we started with Googling cheapest warm locations to fly to. And we found a $300 flight to St. Martin, which a lot of people, I hadn't been before, right? I know a lot of people have talked about a lot of other Caribbean destinations, but I've never been to St. Martin. And so when we saw that flight, we started there and then worked on partnerships around it after that. But I would say like, that's somewhere that it's inexpensive. And even flying to places like South Africa or other parts of Africa, I've been to Ethiopia as well. The flight is really expensive. So we're talking about like $1,000 flight. But that is the biggest expense. Once you get there, I'm talking about steak dinner, 2 glasses of wine, full 3 sides, family style. We walked away paying $50 a person for that dinner that I remember. So that's not even an exaggeration. Or Ubers being much cheaper. Like we just didn't spend a lot once we got there, unless people bought clothes and souvenirs and all the other things. That's what caused the prices to go up. But if you really want to travel on a budget, I think there's ways you can do it. And I also am a big fan of like renting a home away from home. So just kind of finding like Airbnb or Verbo and looking at some of those things and just finding ways to, if you have a big group, bring down the price by everybody pitching in, because a hotel room for your 5 girls is going to be way more expensive than just getting that Airbnb that might be a short drive and a rental car. So there are ways to do it. There are ways to go, like, and my last recommendation would be like Greece. We went to Greece in the first week of October. Now that's considered off season, right? That's not the time where everybody wants to go to Greece, where you're seeing all the pictures in Santorini from May through September. But who cares? It was still warm and there was no tourists. So if you ever seen a picture of Santorini, what it's actually like versus Instagram versus reality, it's like crowded streets. All them pictures with the flying dress, that's a lie. It's so crowded in the summertime. But let me tell you, in October, you really will have nobody behind you. So, that's like a good hack, I would say, also something that we did recently, and just find those times. And we're going to start to put more of that information on our website, so people can actually look up worldoftraveltv.com and find, more information about what got us through, because we definitely had some times where we had to figure out how to budget and make it work.
I love that. Now, speaking of budget, I read that you and your partner Colin, who is the director of the series, paid off $100,000 in debt for your production company in order to self-fund World of Travel. How were you two able to pay off this debt within 1 year?
Yeah, so you know what? It's actually, I want to be transparent because it's actually, a story that wasn't a great time. There was a period where I lost my full time job, and Colin and I were both working full time jobs while working on a production company, which in some ways we could put a pin in that, come back to that, might hinder you when you have these plan Bs. But I was still working it, and I lost my job kind of unexpectedly, or maybe expectedly, because the state of our industry is always fluid. But a huge income went away. And so Colin and I had a choice to either sink or swim, because, for the last 3 years, media has not been in this huge hiring state. We've been in a state of cutting jobs. We've been in a state of consolidating. Big networks are laying off major positions. And that's across the landscape. We're talking about in magazines, on television, and everything, maybe besides Netflix and Amazon, because they seem like they're always hiring somebody. So we just were in an unexpected state where we had to continue paying. And luckily, over the years, I had really great credit. So we were like, okay, it's now or never, sink or swim. We have to invest in the equipment we need. And if anybody knows cameras, some cameras are costing $5,000 to $20,000 just for the body. The lenses are costing $7,000 to $10,000 per lens. So when you talk about running a 4-camera shoot, you guys could do the math of what that would cost, plus what my household costs were, plus what my child costs. And so quickly, I thought I was going to get another full-time job, to be honest, quickly. And quickly, I realized when that wasn't happening, that we were in quite a bit of a jam. I have this unrealistic mindset that I talked about in my TED Talk about things are going to work out well for me. And they usually do, but not always exactly when I want them to. And so, I just had to figure out how to back out of that situation, because as interest rates rose, so do credit cards rise. And so Colin and I kind of just buckled down and really started to seek out big partnerships and take big swings for World of Travel. But in order to lock those in, we would have to figure out how to make our show look to a quality level that people will want to pay for on television. So we funded ourselves going to MIPCOM, which is the biggest unscripted TV festival in the world, in south of France. Very expensive to fly there, $2,500 just to register. All these things that just kept adding on, but it all paid off in the end, because then we left there with somebody who wanted to license our show. Finally, after years of putting this together, we left there with several sponsorships. We work with huge brands, like a company called Day Trip that does ride share service like Uber overseas. And we found a ton of international money to help us fund our series. And luckily, after like a year of just, thinking we were at rock bottom, we was signing some deals that were in the 5-figure range. So not yet 100,000, but close to it. And so we were able to just take that money and invest in paying ourselves back and getting that debt down, and then start to think about, now we're at the stage where we're like, okay, what do we need? What's the new equipment we need? What new crew can we add? But we've never been at that state where we can actually add for a long time, because it was just Colin and I. Then we invested in everything. Then we were in debt. Now we just got past the point of paying it. So now we're at the point where hopefully we're in a good place to start to grow and see our company and see the fruits of our labor continue to grow.
What are some of the strategies that you guys have in place for this year so that your company continue to stay afloat and out of the red?
For sure. So and mind you, we need way more team members. It's just a budget thing. So right now, I am literally like the partnerships lead. In addition to owning the production company and being, you know, somebody who is in on the show, I am also emailing probably like 40 to 50 people a day. And you know, Selena, what it takes to be your own PR, except I'm not being PR. I'm actually intentionally trying to make these relationships and leveraging my social media following of about 100,000 people, plus the television show with its large reach, and saying, listen, let's come up with a deal that works across these lines and figure out how to make something that benefits everybody while staying within the standards that I like to hold myself to and that matches with our show. And so we're seeking out creative ways and brands to work with, constantly reaching out and trying to find those things. But then also, like, we're headed to a conference called Real Screen. That's another US conference where we can find even more distributors. So we signed a non-exclusive deal with Insight, which is how we're airing in all the countries overseas. But we want to find even more US homes to put our show so that people could say, oh girl, I saw you on this channel. I saw you on this channel. Like, you know how you see reruns of Martin on 20 channels? That I want to be in syndication like that. That's the goal. And so that's when I think you really have hit gold with the same content continuously getting paid for. That's what Colin and I are working on, creating content that is not so timely that it doesn't resonate anymore. We're trying to create something that even the traveler that gets started in 10 years can look to and say, wow, that destination is still eye-opening. That history still resonates. I still feel like I'm welcome there by watching this. And that's what we're trying to do, is create longevity in the projects that we're developing now.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Lindsey, I do want to switch gears a bit because many of us know you for the work that you do on News Nation, and you were also a guest host on The View, which is how I first discovered you and your work. So obviously, you know what's going on when it comes to state of affairs and politics. And I want to get your take on that, because we saw within the first week of Trump's second term as president, immigrant communities came under attack. Federal workers who worked in DEI offices were placed on leave and then fired. Immigrants and refugees who actually followed proper protocol processes were denied and left at the border. And then he pardoned 1,500 insurrectionists. What advice would you share with vulnerable communities of color that feel very fearful about what the next 4 years will mean, especially when it started off like that?
I think that feeling is so real. My friend is a school teacher and told me, you know, there are children in her school crying about not knowing if they'll be able to stay in Washington, D.C., because that's considered one of the sanctuary cities, as well as Denver, Colorado, where I'm coming from right now and we live. So, you know, I totally understand that immigration in our country has gotten out of a point of control for most. I think both parties agree that there has to be a streamlined, better process and a better way that we can fund and handle bringing new people to our country, which is something that it was built on. At the same time, I think that, you know, this is a really tough time because President Trump is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He literally is following some of these strategies that he mentioned to the T. And so it's odd to watch people that said, okay, I supported this, some of the moral things that he was talking about, and then being upset that he's actually didn't exclude you from the equation. Now, if you're not one of those people who voted for Trump and you're one of the people who just is reaping the benefits of the choices that other people made, this is a terrible, you know, unfortunate situation. And I think that we're going to see a lot of civil organizations, a lot of lawyers, a lot of government branches, like we already see with the military pushing back against teaching about Tuskegee Airmen, saying that, listen, this is not a dictatorship. So even though we're announcing these things and all these executive orders are happening right away, what happens in the coming weeks are lawsuits, pushback, Supreme Court, right, has to review things. And it's going to all go to that point. Even the firing of all these watchdogs is, they said, we're not leaving. You don't have the authority to just blanket fire everybody on these insight committees to oversee the government. So I think that it's going to be a lot of friction, and a lot of people should be scared. When I saw the headline that we're cutting Black History Month for all federal employees, like, at the end of the day, I believe in autonomy of thought, autonomy of vote. I believe strongly that people had a choice to make in every single election, both local and federal. And I don't like the condescending tone when people make their own decision, the one that people fought for. There's no right or wrong, right? People are allowed to vote how they want. I truly believe that. But I understand that it's important and imperative that people really take the time to research what policies somebody has stood behind. Who are the people paying them and lining their pockets? Who's donating? What do they want and how do they affect you? Because that's why we're here. I don't think that the policies that Kamala had were all in line with every single person, which is why they should have voted for her. But I do think when you look morally at each candidate about who is going to represent you in a way that you're comfortable with, there were a lot of people that are struggling right now that probably could have easily looked at their track records side by side and understood that these policies, particularly like trying to cut SNAP and some of these benefits that we're seeing mentioned that they possibly might be cut, other federal aid programs, that those are things that if if he's attacking cutting the budget, that they're looking at these people who are the most affected people in our community in the United States, the people with the lowest incomes, and those people are kind of getting disregarded, which is turning America into the place that we're not built on being. We're trying to be the people that helps the whole country realize the American dream and finds and affords people ways to get there, realistic ways to get from point A to point B. And so it's a tough time, but my advice to everybody out there would just be to kind of figure out how you navigate this moment right now. I mean, America and people of color particularly have had rough times, even rougher than now in this country. And I think when we saw during the pandemic, the way that the world banded together with people of color, the way that Black people banded together in America was something beautiful. There was some resilience that came out of that. And so this is not something new to people of color. And I think it's time to figure out what our strategies are. Like, I know some people are like, boycott Target or do this because they're cutting DEI, but really start the strategy, but then actually implement a long-term plan, because we are past the point where we need to rely, I think, heavily on government or heavily on these big businesses. We are an economic superpower. Particularly, I'm talking about Black people, because we know that our spending power per capita is higher than a lot of other people. We know that we have the power to pull away and really affect margins. And I think that we can start to have loyalty within our community, support people within our community, and slowly, I know it's a process, build economic ecosystems, support Black-owned banks, support Black-owned companies, and just figure out how to start to build from there. And I know it's going to take a lot of organizing, but social media has made us all so accessible that I think that as you think about what your strategies are, try to connect with like-minded people. And it's something that I'm still working on. Just talk to people like you and I sitting here right now. What do you do? What do I do? How can we work together? What do you do in this other industry? You understand oil and gas. I don't. Where should I be putting my money? Should I get this electric car? Like, have these conversations with people of color within different industries. And you'll find that you have like 100 people supporting you in these new endeavors. And you can support 100 different people just by creating these communities intentionally. And that's why I think we need to do something that we've always done. And history has showed us that we have come together to really create some resilience. I mean, look at the entire civil rights movement. And I think that now is the time to really step up and decide who we want to be post these next 4 years. It is what it is. You know, Trump is president, but who do we want to be after this? And where do we want to be after this?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more that now is the time for us to come together, lean in when it comes to community, and make sure that we are organized, because it is going to be, I am expecting a rough 4 years, but the more organized we are and the more we build ourselves as a collective, that really does help us to retain our power and use it to fight for the betterment and advancement of our people. So couldn't agree with you more there,
I think there's
Lindsey.
beauty in positive stories. Like, I know that a lot of news in the last 25 days has been completely negative, or the last month of January and February, might continue to be negative about the negative impacts of some of these policies on communities of color. But you know what I don't see? How much beautiful activity is going on within our community. And I know that people are still resilient. You know, rest is resistance. Happiness is resistance. And so we choose to be on some of these platforms that promote the negativity and the stereotypes of our community, but we can choose differently. right? We can put out different content. We can decide, a lot of these, like Black Enterprise, right? We can decide what is going to be the overarching message. I can decide as a production company owner what story I'm going to tell. Is it constantly the one of heartache and pain and struggle, or is it a different story? And so I think with the versatility of what we have access to as content creators, as people who indulge in social media, we can start to support more of that positivity and intentionally follow some of that positivity, like the blackmancan.com or their sites, and really make sure that every day we're not bombarded by this negativity, because you'll be surprised. There's studies that show how much consuming all that negative news impacts you in such a negative
Oh, it
way.
does. I mean, one of the best platforms to support right now would be World of Travel, which is a Black-owned, Black-owned produced series that you again have been putting out with your partner Colin. Tell us again, remind us when and how we can get some of that content, especially for us who just need a break from the news cycle and just need something positive and uplifting.
And that's the thing. We all need to, like, I watched Michelle Obama's show, The Later Daters, I think it's called, on Netflix. And I was like, what a nice release from the week of news. And I think, again, World of Travel is like that type of show. We still want you to feel like you took away something and learned something, but also want you to take a moment to literally escape with us to some of these destinations around the world and really create in your mind what you want to do next. And so people can just go to www.worldoftraveltv.com and you'll see all the information about how to watch us, when to watch us, where to watch us, our merch, and just everything about the series. That really, the biggest goal is just to bring a bit of joy to everyone, but particularly people in our community, to see that there's so much positivity going on in this world at simultaneously with all the news that may be bombarding you.
Lindsey, thank you so much, not only for your time today, but for what you're doing when it comes to the community, the representation that you give us, and just that spark of optimism to let us know that we'll get through the next 4 years. And I think it's also inspirational how you've been, working on this passion project, which is now lucrative and profitable. So again, thank you so much for sharing your story today and for your time.
Thank you, Selena. I'm so excited to have finally done this with you. Thanks so much for having me.